Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 1394. This week, I've been celebrating the inaugural Las Vegas Concours d'Elegance that takes place October 25th through the 28th at the Dragon Ridge Country Club in Henderson, Nevada, just south of Las Vegas. I'm proud to say that Cars Yeah has been a sponsor of this prestigious event. To learn more, go to LasVegasConcours.com.
The cars are really a tool that gathers us all together, and whether it's a Model A Ford or Ferrari, it really makes no difference.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
What's the worst thing for your car's interior? No, it's not that milkshake the kid spilled in the back seat. It's the sun. Harmful UV rays cook your automobile's interior hour after hour when it's parked outside, even on a cloudy day. What's the solution? Covercraft sunscreens. They protect your dash, seats, and interior finishes from those damaging UV rays while keeping the interior temperature tolerable, even on the hottest summer days. No more painfully sizzling seats and steering wheels for you. They unfold quickly and easily install, stay where you put them, and are custom patterned for an exact fit. The foam core acts as a cooling insulator, and you can get yours in different colors and finishes. And they even fold up easily and store under your seat or on the floor. I've used Covercraft sunscreens for years, and they are a fast and easy solution that protect my beloved cars when they're not in the garage. Learn more and order yours at Covercraft.com. Want to protect your entire vehicle? Get a car cover from Covercraft. They have those too. That's Covercraft.com, and tell them Mark sent you. Mark Green here. I'm a car care fanatic. You know that. And I've discovered Migliore luxury car care products. Migliore Strata Coating is a ceramic treatment that you can easily apply by yourself. It provides your special vehicle with a high gloss finish and lasts for over a year. Migliore Strata Coating features an extreme hydrophobic finish, so water sheets right away, reducing water spotting, and it makes your car washing a breeze. With over 100 positive reviews on Amazon, this is a time-tested product that's made here in the USA. With fall and winter on the way, protect your vehicle's finish with Migliore. You'll find all their premium car care products at MiglioreWax.com. Plus, you'll get 10% off at checkout by using the code CARSYEAH. 10% off. What a deal. That's MiglioreWax.com. Hello, automotive enthusiasts. I'm revved up and so excited to introduce today's very special guest, calling in from beautiful Belcarra, British Columbia, John Carlson. John, are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
Mark, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, we'll have some fun. John Carlson is the chief judge for the National Association of Automobile Clubs of Canada Corporation and the Vintage Car Club of Canada. He is judged at the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance for over 25 years. He is the chief judge for the Arizona, Cobble Beach, Las Vegas, Crescent Beach, Hilton Head, and the Vancouver Island Concours. John is judged at most of the major Concours events in the United States and Canada for over the past 50 years. He's written well over 100 in-depth articles dealing with vintage car restoration and the collector car hobby. He's an International Chief Judge Advisory Group founding member, and he serves on the LeMay America's Car Museum Steering Committee. They're just down the road from me here in Gig Harbor, and has been inducted into the 3 major Motorsports Hall of Fames and is a recipient of the prestigious Lee Iacocca Award. John's a little busy, I think. So, John, I've told our listeners a little bit about you. Would you take a brief moment and share a little bit more about your life and a very obvious passion that you have for old automobiles?
Well, thank you very much, Mark. I'm very blessed to have been surrounded by a great group of car guys and car gals, and it's been one of the most rewarding things in my life. I've been involved with cars since I was probably 14 years old, and have never looked back. It's always exciting and it's always different.
Well, definitely. I'll tell our listeners, I've been trying to connect with John for a while, but he and his wife have been traveling quite extensively at car shows and so forth. And we were chatting in our pre-show chat list, and turns out he was there at the groundbreaking for the LeMay Museum, being involved in that. And I said, yeah, I remember. You got a very memorable face. So it's nice to reconnect with you here on Cars. Yeah. Well, as we continue on your journey, I always like to start with a success quote or a mantra. This is some kind of saying that's been instrumental in forming your life and your success. Really nice way to get the inspirational tires turning here on Cars. Yeah, I know you love to drive. So, John, take the wheel.
I don't have a quote that would be meaningful for you, but it's the people in the hobby that are really important. The cars are really a tool that gathers us all together. And whether it's a Model A Ford or a Ferrari, it really makes no difference. At the end of the game, it's about the people you meet and the experiences you have. And for me, that's the most important part of the whole thing.
You know, I've said that for years, and I've definitely learned it after, 1,393 interviews now, is that the cars are the catalyst that binds us all together. And I've learned that in this car hobby you and I are involved in, it's very unique because it crosses all socioeconomic, gender, politics, whatever it is. When car people get together, there's an instant bond. We're just friends. You could be on the lawn with somebody who's a billionaire and a guy who scraped together every penny to build that car that he has. But we're all friends. We're all equals. And we all love the same thing. So I'm so glad that you shared that because it really is true, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, for sure. I, quite frankly, would not be in the hobby if it wasn't for that aspect of it. It has nothing to do with value. It has nothing to do with prestige. It really has it's the commonality of the people that are involved in the hobby that really keep me involved.
Absolutely. Well, let's go back in time a little bit because you talked about being a car guy since you were pretty young. Is there a pivotal point in your life when you knew, you know what, I am indeed a car guy?
That's a very good question. I certainly knew I was a car guy when I was about 14 years old. I had no money, had a paper route, lusted after owning a car. And fortunately, the home that we lived in at the time was on the downside of an alley. And as I was walking by one of my paper route customers, I looked in the garage and there was a 1936 Plymouth with 4 flat tires sitting in the garage. And I went to the owner, and she was one of my customers, and I asked her if she'd be interested in selling the car. And she said, why would you like to have that car? And I said, well, I'd like to fix it up and drive it to high school. And she said, well, and I said, well, what would you like to have for the car if you were going to sell it? And she said, well, how much money do you have? I said, I have $12. And she said, that's exactly what I want for the car.
Exactly what I need. Isn't that great?
And we pumped up the tires, literally, and we put them up on a jack, and a couple of friends of mine, and we pumped up the tires to a point where the car would roll. And fortunately, as I said, I was on the downside of the alley, so we could roll the car into my backyard. If I'd have been on the upside of the alley, I wouldn't have owned the car.
You needed more friends to push the car.
There you go. Absolutely. We never looked back from there. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's an awesome story. I had a paper route as well as a kid when I was 14, and my dad said, you know, in a few years, you're going to be driving. You better start saving up for a car. And so on top of my paper route, I started a car detailing business, and that's how I saved up enough money to buy my first car. It was a little more than $12 though. I had to pay actually I had to pay $1,200, but at any rate, I didn't have to pump up the tires. It had new tires on it. So we'll see. Maybe I needed more friends so I could have pushed a car to my garage. Let's talk about some of these roads you've driven down, because no doubt you've been faced with a challenge or two, maybe even a failure or two. And I like asking guests to kind of go back to a time when you faced something that was like that and share the story. But more importantly, what was the learning lesson, and how did that lesson help you move out of that situation in a positive way?
Well, that's a really tough question for me, because I'm one of those people that don't let go. So I work long hours. Sometimes I'll work 12, 14 hours a day on a particular project to ensure that it takes place. One of my roles as president of the National Association of Automobile Clubs of Canada is to guide my board of directors through a lot of quicksand. We're very fortunate in that we're partners with SEMA, and we're continually lobbying against restrictive legislation for the car world. We've been very successful in most cases with the federal government in Canada and many of the provincial governments as well. But there have been some disappointments where the government, it's been so difficult to get them to bend, and the hours that have spent have seemed like they're futile. And there have been a number of little disappointments. But overall, for me, we've had very, very many successes. And that's what keeps me going.
This is a great point because when you look at the collector car hobby and old cars that aren't really driven very much, if any, in some cases, and the rules that seem to be getting tighter and tighter in Canada, the United States, and they talk about, well, France is a good example, I think in Paris now, and I'll be corrected if I'm wrong here, they don't even allow certain age cars to even be driven in Paris anymore, that these nooses are kind of tightening around this world. And I get it from some respect, but of course, I'm a car guy and I like my old cars and I like to take them out once in a while. Let me ask you this. When you're faced with these situations, and especially dealing with governments that are they make all of us smash our head on the keyboard every day, I think, no matter what country you're in. What are some of the ways or things that you kind of use or tricks to work through these things, even when things aren't going your way, that might help somebody that's in a similar situation, whether it's with the government or maybe it's just with their spouse or their kids or their boss?
Mark, that's a really good question. And I guess I could start at the municipal government level. We often think that the mayor is the most important figure in the political scheme in many municipalities, or in your particular case, let's say the state of Washington. But the reality is it's the municipal managers who have the power. The people that are the bureaucrats that are there from day to day who aren't elected officials. And I think for me, the most success that I've been able to accomplish is by befriending and working with those people on a one-to-one basis. By doing that, they then can direct their superiors in a way that's politically more correct for their superior, but at the same time, you're not beating your head against the wall. If that municipal manager isn't on your side, it's an uphill battle all the time. Well, the other thing I've learned that's very important for me is that you never attack. I never am belligerent. I'm never demanding in an abusive way when I'm dealing with any kind of bureaucrat, because it just doesn't work. I think logic and sitting down across the table from each other is really the way to get where you need to be. And I've had a lot of people tell me over the years that the United States and Canada are very different in the way we do business, and they're absolutely 100% correct. In the United States, lobbying is a very big deal, and paid attorneys are a very big deal. In Canada, it's the good old boys backroom approach where you can call a bureaucrat and you can also call the local mayor or someone who's in charge of a particular committee and ask them to sit down for lunch. During that lunch period or during a more informal meeting, we get a lot more work done than anything that could possibly be done by demanding or by threatening or those type of things. That doesn't work in the political world for me.
Right. Well, it doesn't work in the real world either. You see it when you're at airports, people yelling at the poor ticket counter person because of a weather flight delay or something, or in the case of going even in, I did a remodel in my home years ago, and I went through the process just to experience it of going down and getting a permit. I should have hired somebody to do that. It was horrible. Yeah. But you sit down there all day waiting to talk to this one person who holds your whole project in the power of their hands. And I watched people around me yelling at people and cursing them and screaming and everything. I'm thinking, you know what? They're never going to be nice to you if you treat them like that. Never. Right. So, I mean, you got to kind of kowtow sometimes. But I think what you're saying more importantly is human interaction, helping them understand your situation, educating people, especially when it comes to what old cars and collectors and the hobby is about versus what their perception might be. That seems to be the right approach.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And in almost all cases, they're well-intentioned bureaucrats who have no idea about the hobby itself. As an example, we had a bill that was being promoted in Canada, Bill 241, a number of years ago, that said they were going to remove all 1978 and older vehicles off the public highways. And when you talk, well, yes, it was devastating. When you talk to those people that were behind this bill, and it had already gone through first reading, so it was on its way to being passed, they had no idea of how it was going to affect just the farming community, how it was going to affect the collector car community across Canada itself. And they didn't realize that the collector car community, as an example in British Columbia, was required at one time to take all of their cars through air care to make sure that they passed from a pollution point of view. The irony is that every single car that went through air care in British Columbia passed, with the exception of one, because they instituted a committee at Air Care that if a car wouldn't pass, they had a group of mechanics that looked at that car to find out what was wrong with it, and they corrected the problem, or the car was so worn out that it couldn't be driven anymore. So the bottom line was they just didn't know. And when they found out, they said, my gosh, we had no idea. And they gave us an exclusion for all cars 1934 and newer from an Air Care point of view, and made sure that all of those cars passed. So once again, it was a case of they just didn't know.
Right. And think about all the businesses that old cars support, restoration shops, parts providers, all these different things that will be affected and destroyed, basically put out of business.
It's in the billions of dollars, not the millions. Yeah. It's in the billions. Yeah. We had a call from Motorsport Complex in Montreal suggesting that the federal government was going to ban leaded racing fuel, and that was going to impact their operations because the Americans at that time who came up to race, they all ran on leaded racing fuel. They were no longer going to come across the border. So the National Association was able to negotiate back and forth with the federal government and got an extension on that particular ban, which we still have today, that allows leaded racing fuel to still be used at the racetracks in Canada. What's happened, and we knew this was going to happen, is the American folks and the Canadian folks have developed engines and the technology so they don't have to use leaded racing fuel anymore. But the thought of having it restricted, that was going to be economically disastrous for us.
Right.
So working with the government, the same with lacquer-based paint. Lacquer-based paint is often felt that it shouldn't be used. Well, from a restoration point of view, if you have vehicles that have been restored with lacquer-based paint, then do you want to do a complete new restoration and a complete new paint job, or do you want to repair? So we approached them with a repair aspect, and they said, that makes perfectly good sense to us. So they now continue to allow us to use lacquer-based paint. So those are just a couple of very small successes that we've had with the government, but it illustrates that sitting down at the table and making them aware of our problems solves a lot of problems.
Absolutely. And you mentioned SEMA. Shout out to SEMA, a wonderful organization that helps so many different organizations, businesses, people in the car hobby to help some of this legislation gets passed. And so that, again, people that are setting these rules up understand the economic impact this has on so many different people. When it sounds like a good, feel-good thing to do, but they don't realize, oh my gosh, look at the layers and dominoes we're going to knock down here with one bill. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Let's have a little bit of fun and talk about your first really special vehicle in your life, that first ride that really brings back some good memories.
Well, Mark, before you do that, you mentioned SEMA, and I'd like to touch base on that for just a moment.
Yes,
if you
absolutely.
We're dealing with it. We've been dealing with SEMA for a number of years, and I deal directly with a gentleman by the name of Colby Martin. A SEMA that I wanted to point out. A SEMA has a group called SEMA SAN, SEMA Action Network. This conversation you or I are having, I'd like to direct your listening audience to join the SEMA SAN. It doesn't cost a dime. All they have to do is call up on the internet itself, fill out the application, and they're automatically a member of SEMA SAN. And by doing that, that gives one more member some clout for SEMA to use, because numbers are everything when you're dealing with government. So I really encourage the involvement with SEMA SAN. And if people call up the SEMA website, they can see all of the interactions that are taking place with governments in every state across the 50 United States, as well as in Canada as well. So a wonderful group
awesome
to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me make sure I get the spelling of that right. Could you spell that? I know SEMA is SEMA, but SEMA SAN, how do you spell that?
It's SEMA, SEMA/SAN.
Got it.
If you call that up on the internet, it's very, very, very straightforward.
Absolutely. I'll make sure I put links to those on John's show notes page here on Cars. Yeah, check it out. Yeah, and if you're in the automotive business, you need to be a part of SEMA. Of course, the SEMA show is coming up here end of October, first week of November. So absolutely a great organization that helps so many people in the industry. Wade Kawasaki, the director now of SEMA, has been a guest on the show, a good friend of mine. It's a wonderful organization. And if you can go to the event, it's really, really spectacular. So, well, I had asked you earlier about your first special car, special vehicle, and maybe share a memory you have about that ride.
Well, going back to that ride when I was 14 years old, by the time I was 16, we were able to have the car on the road. As I said, it was a 36 Plymouth two-door sedan. It had no miles on it. It was absolutely gorgeous in every possible way. Within 2 weeks of having the car, I stripped every piece of chrome off of it. Literally. It was a light green. I went to the local store and bought a gallon of black paint and immediately painted it with a brush. Can you imagine? And it had a cloth insert, so we painted that white. And in those days, this is in the late 50s. In those days, that was the big deal to have white running boards. So it had a white insert and white running boards. And literally, you could buy rubber paint that would stick to the tires, and we painted on white wall tires and made them so you didn't have those flappy things. And split the manifold, heated the front coils with a welding torch, because as you heated them, the side of the car would drop down on the front, so you got just the right look. I took a totally, perfectly great car and turned it into a hot rod,
of course
which
you did.
I dearly loved. And I was a hot rod guy for my first I would say the first 15 years of my car career. I love them today and have one today as well.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, listeners, if you're not familiar with that model, go check it out. It's got a very tall, narrow grill, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, cool.
Carson's very proud. Yeah, you'd have to send me some pictures of what it looked like after you played with it a little
Yes.
bit. Do you have a seller's remorse story in your life, a car you wish you still had that you let go?
I do, and it deals with my great friend Harold LeMay. Harold and his wife Nancy were staying with us, and he went down to my showroom. As he roamed around, I remember he gave me the greatest compliment I've ever had, and it was truly a classic. He said to me, "John, you don't have much, but what you have is really good."
Well, knowing
yeah.
Harold, and what he had 3,800 cars at the end of his life, I think, something like that. So yeah, you don't have much.
No, that's right. I only had 15, and of the 15, he said, "Oh, I like all of these, and I really would like to have this Corvette." And it was a 63 split window. And I said, "Well, Harold, why do you want that?" He said, "Well, it's going to be the last car I'm ever going to buy." I said, "Really?" Very good friend Charlie Maxwell from the Tacoma area, who was Harold's right-hand man. Charlie phoned me and said, "Harold, I understand Harold's going to buy your 63 split window Corvette." And I said, "He is. I'm giving it to him." He said, "Really?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, okay, it's going to be his last car. That's what he's told everybody." I said, "That would be great." So we took it down to Harold's gathering in Tacoma when he has the big open house. And we waited until the end of the day, and then we drove it in, and Charlie announced that it was his last car he was ever going to buy. Harold was delighted. He sat behind the wheel. Everything was wonderful. And 3 days later, I found out that he had bought another car.
Well, of course. I mean,
of course. He couldn't quit.
No, he had a habit. I mean, it never did end until his last breath. But that's a funny story. I didn't know that story. I got to meet Harold when I first moved up here 25 years ago and visit he and Nancy at their house and look at all the different things. I mean, I never saw so much stuff in one house than I have ever seen in my life.
Yes. Yeah,
oh my gosh. Interesting couple. And I'll remind our listeners here, if you're ever in the Tacoma, Seattle area, you got to visit the LeMay America's Car Museum. It's absolutely spectacular. They culled out those 3,800 cars and kept the best of the best. And they have special exhibits there. It's really, really a great museum to go visit. All my friends here, I've had many guests on the show here that are part of LeMay. Well, let's talk about this upcoming Las Vegas Concours. I really want you to talk about what has you excited about this. This whole week I've had guests, starting with Stuart, whose brainchild was to start this thing. I told Stuart, I said, "Man, you're a brave guy to start a Concours and do it at this level, a 4-day event. But you're involved in this event too. I've had great people on the show involved in it. So what has you excited about this new Concours?"
Well, the new Concours for me it's a visionary project. He, for the first time in the Concours world, has put a serious emphasis on women and their impact in the collector car hobby and in automobile design. So the Hilton Awards, which is a strong approach to recognizing one of the very first women in automotive design at a factory level, is the inspiration behind his project. Stuart approached me and asked me if I would consider being the chief judge for the organization. Quite frankly, I get approached a lot for doing those kind of things, and I'm very careful whether I accept something, because It takes many, many, many hours in order to put a judge program together. And I'm all about being fair and transparent. So he interviewed me and I interviewed him. And I must tell you, I was very impressed. He had all of the right answers. He wants to put together an event that will be world class. And I had said to him, well, I have 5 things that I use as criteria as to whether I would accept a position that you're asking me to be involved in. And they are, tell me about the money that's involved, because if you don't have good sponsorship or if you don't have serious money in order to put the event together, it's not going to happen. So they go side by side. It sounds a little crass, but if you don't have sponsorship or if you don't have serious money, then you can't have the event in the type of an event that he was trying to promote, which is certainly a world-class program. The second thing is, tell me about the venue. And if you don't have a great venue, then people aren't going to be interested in coming. It can't be in a parking lot. It has to be something that's visually fantastic. Pebble Beach is a great example. Amelia Island is a good example. The Cobble Beach Concours in Owen Sound in Canada is probably one of the prettiest venues I've ever seen in my entire life. And they've hit all of the goalposts for that event. It just couldn't be any better. So in talking to Stuart, he said, well, we're going to have the show at the Dragon Ridge Golf and Country Club. It's a very exclusive event, very exclusive venue, and private club. Would you be interested in coming down to view and see it? I said, absolutely. So the third thing for me was, starting off, it was the sponsorship. The second was the event. And the third was, tell me about your judges. And he said, well, what do you mean, tell me about your judges? And I said, well, if I'm going to be your chief judge, I would like to handpick every judge, and I'd like them to come from across the United States, across Canada, and from Europe. I want the best judges that are in existence, and I'd like to have free reign in selecting those judges. And he said, well, you can choose anybody that you would like to have. And I said, and I gave him a list of criteria as to what the compensations were for the judges. In other words, and it's not financial compensation, it's looking after the judges. So hotels and meals and things that are important so that they don't have to reach in their own pockets and spend their own money for the privilege of coming to look after his event. And I was able to do that. I have people coming from Europe, from across the United States, and from across Canada. It's a 45-judge field, and quite frankly, it's a grouping of some of the very best judges in the world. And the last thing, the two other things are, because it rounds off the program for me, is why are you doing this? And he said, I'd like to do something that's very special, and we would like to do something that's going to have a great economic impact on the local community. And my goal is to put together something that's never been done before in the way we actually assemble the cars with a great judge team like you're able to put together. We would like to do something that's a little different in the Concours world. And that really impressed me, because generally people put together Concours for a very, very hidden agenda, or they do it just for ego, or they do it for a charity. And frankly, ego is fine, but it has to be much bigger than that. And a charity is fine, but frankly, charities that end up driving the Concours cause the ruination of the Concours, generally. So what I like to see is a charity involved in the Concours, which he certainly has, and that charity is at arm's length, so that when the dollars that are generated from the Concours are divided up, a portion of those dollars can go to the charity, but those other dollars can go back into the function to make it actually viable for the second year or the third year or whatever. As I used Cobble Beach as an example, they're into their 8th year now and have become very successful. If you look at Pebble Beach, Pebble Beach is, well, it's really the benchmark of Concours in the United States for me. Amelia Island on the East Coast is another benchmark for me, because both of those Concours have become extremely successful.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, this is tremendous. I'm glad you gave us an insider's look here at the reasons why. I think it's great. Stuart, again, was a guest on the show Monday. I'd encourage listeners to go back and listen to his show if you missed it. He was actually a guest as well back in February when this whole thing was getting going. So it's really incredible, the group he's put together, people like you and the judges. It's going to be a world-class event, no doubt. John, up next is the last lap. Before we put the pedal to the metal, let's say thank you to today's Cars Yeah sponsors. When you want proven performance, there's one brand that's been around since 1938. That's Edelbrock, building the finest American-made performance products for the street and track. Edelbrock's products are designed and dyno-proven to deliver maximum results. Edelbrock has thousands of made-in-the-USA performance products for all makes and models. From their new AVS2 carburetor and innovative ProFlow 4 EFI for your muscle car or truck, to superchargers for your daily driver and more, visit Edelbrock.com to check out the latest products for your ride. And when you're ready to check out, enter Cars Yeah in the coupon code and get 10% off your order. That's Edelbrock, automotive performance since 1938. You take care of your cars, but who takes care of your investments? Tune-ups aren't just for engines. Updating your financial plan is important too. Your GPS may take you from A to B, but it won't help you on the road to financial freedom. For that, you need a good co-pilot and a very trusted advisor. Chris Kimball, CFP, is just the man for the job. He'll guide you down that road without driving you crazy. For over 25 years, Chris has helped people just like you and me with their financial planning and investments. With a master's degree in financial services, he is eminently qualified, and he's a car guy too. Learn more at chrisvkimball.com or call 866-ON-A-PLAN. Securities through Money Concepts Capital Corp. Member FINRA SIPC. CK Financial Services is not affiliated with Money Concepts Capital Corp. Are you looking for a way to get your products or services into the ears of thousands of automotive enthusiasts around the globe? I can help. This is Mark Green here at Cars Yeah, and I'd be honored to be an influencer and ambassador for your brand in a unique and personal way. 5 days a week, thousands of subscribers and listeners enjoy the Cars Yeah podcast and website. Contact me today and I'll show you how at mark@carsyeah.com or connect with me through the Cars Yeah website at carsyeah.com. Okay, John, we're back, and I have a bit of an introspective question. I'm going to get into your head a little bit here. If you were manifested as a vehicle, not what you want to be, but how you perceive yourself as iron and rubber and steel and chrome, what would John be and why?
Oh, that's an easy question for me. John would be a J2 Allard.
Okay.
Probably from 1950, because for me, it was rude and crude and looked like a beer can with cycle fenders, and it was the fastest thing on four wheels.
Oh, you're much more handsome than that, John. Come on.
No, those cars were they were a car that could be raced on any racetrack, and they were a car that could be driven around your local neighborhood. They were the fastest thing on two wheels, and just add two more wheels to the back, but they were very seldom on the ground. And I have one of those cars, and I've had it for a long, long time, and truly love it. And so, for me, every time I get in that car, I relate to it. Mark, I sent you a picture of me sitting in the cockpit of that car.
Yes, that'll be on your show notes page.
Well, that's a really great car. That was the car that won the very first Monterey Unlimited in 1950 at Pebble Beach, and has a staggering history. If you look down the side of the car, there are a group of names that drove the car. One of the fellows whose name appears in that car, he was the third driver. The car was initially brought into the country by E. Allen Moss, who was the owner of Moss Motors. And Alan and I were very close friends before he passed away. And then the second driver of the car was a fellow by the name of Bill Carmen. And the third driver of the car was a gentleman by the name of Tommy Sparks. And Tommy Sparks owned Sparks and Bonnie Machine Work, and they were a hot rod building group in the early 50s. And Tom went on to own Sparks Restoration. And then from there, he just broadened his horizons and did everything that related to the car world, including owning a huge fleet of vehicles that he rented to the movie industries. Well, Tom was one of my judging partners at Pebble Beach for 10 years. And I can remember, just like it was yesterday, we were walking back and to the clubhouse, and Tom said, "John, what are you working on?" And I said, "Well, I'm not really working on anything that you'd be interested in, I'm sure." He said, "Well, what are you working on?" I said, "Well, I'm working on a J2 Allard." He said, "Really?" He said, "When I was a young man, I used to drive and race a J2 Allard." I said, "Did you really?" Long story short, Tom actually drove the car that I own. And his wife Laura said to me, John, you wouldn't like to have pictures of Tommy driving the car, would you?
Yeah.
And that's when he was racing at a variety of major racetracks through Southern California. He was about 22 to 25 years old. And here we are some 40 years later on the judging fields of Pebble Beach, sharing this wonderful story. And there were probably only, this is a ballpark, but there are 89 of those cars that were made, and there probably aren't more than 25 of them left in the world of that particular body style. And here I'm judging with one of the fellows that actually raced the car that I own. So
incredible.
It was a really inspiring and fun thing for me to experience.
Yeah, small world. Well, my longtime listeners will remember I had Roger Allard on the show. It's a guy out of the Allard Motor Works Company that's making modern versions of that car. They kind of look like the old cars. Of course, they're not the original cars like you have, but you can go back and listen to my talk with Roger back. He was guest number 45. And you're number 1,393. So it's been a few people, but yeah.
I certainly know Roger and have looked at his car and sat in it. It's a beautiful, beautiful replication of the body style itself. But I must tell you, Roger's cars are much more sophisticated than my car.
Yes. Yeah. Well, of course. Yeah. Old race cars
yes.
are old race cars. Well, we are entering the last lap, John. I'm going to fire off a series of questions and ask you to give our listeners some quick blips of that Allard throttle. So here we go. What's the best automotive advice you've ever received?
Do your homework.
Yes.
A very wise man once told me, find the best person. If you're going to restore a car, join the marque that car belongs to and do the research that's necessary so that you can bring that car back to an absolute nut and bolt, authentic restoration. I think authenticity and correctness is extremely important. Doing the homework in tracking down the aficionados who are the best in that particular game, and if they're willing to help you a little bit, that would be very positive. I have lots of people who phone me on a regular basis who need a little bit of guidance and help as to where they should go to get great advice for their particular marks, and I think that's really important in a restoration world. I think joining a club and being an active member is really important, and also joining a national club. Whatever you're interested in, it just doesn't matter what kind of car it is, and there are no cars that are better than other cars. If we're playing with serious Classic Car Club of America classics, they're wonderful. If you're playing with a Model A Ford, they're equally as wonderful. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder for me, and so it's the homework that I think brings you to the conclusion that you want to try to aspire to.
Yeah, save you a lot of headaches. How about a personal habit that you have that you believe has contributed to your many successes over the years?
I don't think I have any personal habits.
I got no habits.
I have no habits because I'm so spur of the moment. I'm pulled and tugged every day because my phone never stops ringing. I think once again, in the judging world, for me, I think transparency is really, really critical for me. And I guess you could classify that as a habit because I don't vary from that. When I was talking to Stuart about judging, I said, Stuart, your show needs to be 100% transparent, and you'll have nothing to do with the selection of best of class or the selection of best of show. We want this to be, and it'll be done by secret ballot, and it'll be done by the chief class judges who've just judged all of this field. And he was totally okay with that. That's really exciting for me to hear because there are other shows that aren't so transparent, and with Stuart's show, there will be complete transparency.
Yeah, it's really great. And if you missed my talk, listeners, with Ed Gilbertson on Wednesday of this week, we talk a lot about judging criteria and the group he's put together, ICJAG, and how the judging is done in very much that same way. So that's fantastic. Now, we talked earlier about a resource. We talked about SEMA.com and SEMA/SAN, SAN.com. Is there another resource you'd like to share?
The National Association of Automobile Clubs of Canada Corporation. NAACC has been in existence since the early 1970s. It's a group that I've been the national president of for the last 19 years, and I sat on the executive in the very late 70s and early 80s. It's comprised of directors from every province in Canada, and touches over 450,000. It's the largest association in North America. It touches over 450,000 enthusiasts. The dues for our organization are really nothing. They cost $5 a member. That's it. We provide liability insurance for the various clubs, probably the best, and that's a bold statement, it's probably the best liability insurance program that an automobile club can have because it covers literally everything except racing and speed trials. So if you were serving food at a club function, you're covered. If you were serving alcohol at a Christmas party, you're covered. If you were doing anything that relates to the rental of a building, you're covered. So I use the NAA as a serious resource because I know their background, and they put together a cross-Canada tour every 10 years, and now they're doing it every 5 years. The most recent cross-Canada tour was in 2017, where the folks drove 20,000 kilometers and were gone for 3 months. They started in Victoria, British Columbia, and ended up in St. John's, Newfoundland. They're going to be doing another tour in 2022, coming from Newfoundland and ending up in Victoria, British Columbia. So,
what a drive.
Yeah, and over 100 cars, all collector cars, pulling trailers and just having a great time.
Sounds great. Now, if I could arrange for you to sit down and have a drink or a meal with anyone in the automotive industry, living or deceased, who would that individual be?
Oh, that's a really good question, and he just passed away. That would have been Lee Iacocca. I was very, very blessed to be able to be a recipient of his award. I had a chance to talk to him at Pebble Beach many, many, many years ago. We were all seated at the same table at the banquet, and it was just a fluke that he was at that table. And frankly, I didn't know who he was. And he was sitting across the table from us, and he was fairly quiet that evening. And if I could go back in time, I would change my seat and be sitting beside him so I could pick his brain. He really was. In reading his background, he was really, truly an inspiration for the automotive industry, and certainly was a serious, serious car guy. And what he did for the hobby by instituting the Lee Iacocca Award was brilliant. And all you have to do is call it up on the internet and read who the recipients are and what his goals were in establishing that award. It was phenomenal, truly.
Yeah, well, congratulations on being a recipient of that very prestigious award. Now, if you could offer us a book suggestion to our listeners, is there one you can think of?
There is. It's a phenomenal book. It's written by Bob Devlin, and the title is Pebble Beach, A Matter of Style. It's an old book that's been around for a long time. It's a limited edition. It's kind of pricey. You need to find it on the internet, but it gives you all of the background history of Pebble Beach when it first started in 1950, when the real concours started in about 1957-58, and then the racetrack portion of the concours moved to Laguna Seca Raceway. And it gives you that background information from then right up through the 60s and into the 70s. The reading is phenomenal. Bob did a great job in writing it. He's one of my favorite authors, there's no question about that. And actually, he's an honorary judge at Pebble Beach Concours now as well. He didn't miss a beat when he wrote that book. It's complete with photographs. He talks about lap speeds, the various winners. Everything is included in that book. That book is probably about 2 inches thick, hardcover, and really worthwhile seeking out.
Absolutely. Bob was a guest of mine here on Cars Yeah almost a year ago exactly to the date of your show here. Of course, a noted author, Pebble Beach historian. He was on the show to help promote the Ironstone Concours. That's another concours that I help promote every year. Just took place last weekend. Bob is a great guy, so I encourage you to check this out. Find a copy of this book. It's worthy of your automotive library shelf. All right, John, we're up to the checkered flag, and this last question could be a bit of a doozy. Today, I'm going to buy you any cool collector car on the planet, but by my rules. And here's what my rules are. You can't sell it to buy a bunch of other toys or cars with. You have to drive it. No garage queens here. But here's the kicker. It's the only one collector car you can have in your garage. So either you have the car of your dreams and I don't have to buy you a car, or I'm guessing I'm going to buy you something very special today.
You'll be surprised at the car that I would choose.
Okay. Because
immediately I'm looking at a car that I can take to pretty much any club function. It would be welcomed at any club function, even at the Classic Car Club of America level, and it will not be a classic. But the car for me that turns all of the switches would be a 1963 split-window Corvette, 4-speed, with air conditioning. The car itself is iconic in design. It's accepted by everyone and is a very similar car that I let Harold LeMay steal away from me. So I would like to have that, and I would buy that car again if I could only have one car.
There you go. Well, that's a pretty cool choice. And I am surprised at that. But you know what? That is a very cool car. And you think about 63, I was born in the late 50s, so I kind of think of the 60s as not that long ago, but then I have to stop and go, oh my gosh, that was a long time ago. So, yeah, iconic.
For me, Mark, it's all about being able to play with the car at a club level and at a hobbyist level. And so the cars open doors, and also the Woody wagons. I mean, the Woody wagons of the 40s are also fantastic, and they open lots of doors. And at the same time, they're lots of fun, and they have very, very serious groups that follow those cars. So any of those types of cars that allow you access to lots of different functions, that's very high on my priority list.
Now, do you know whether, is that car still owned? Is it owned by Nancy LeMay, or is it owned by the LeMay America's Car Museum?
It's sitting in LeMay America's Car Museum, and it's one of their feature cars. They use it as one of their main promotion cars today. It's Daytona blue on blue with a blue interior. Yeah,
I know that car. Well, it's just down the street, so I'm going to run down there when they're not looking. I'll jump in that thing and start heading north to beautiful British Columbia, so I can deliver that to you. And maybe by the end of the day here, I could get up there.
I'll phone the border and get free access for you.
Thank you. I'm going to need that because there's going to be 20 cops chasing me all the way up there. So, there you go. Well, John, you've taken me on an awesome ride today. This has been great fun. I want to thank you for sharing your journey. Could you offer us a little parting piece of wisdom or guidance before I deliver that 63 split window Corvette to you up there in beautiful British Columbia?
Yes, I can. For those people that are involved in showing, and you'll find this a strange grouping of comments, the only person that cares whether you won a trophy is you. The only person that will remember that you won a trophy is you. And if you really need a trophy, go buy one, buy the nicest one you can afford, and save yourself $100,000. What you really want to do is, whether you're showing your car for correctness and authenticity, or whether you're showing your car for just the pure joy of putting it on display, what you really want to understand is that the trophy has already been won because your car's on the show field. And I see that at Pebble Beach on a regular basis, where people are very upset that they haven't been one of the first, second, or third place winners, when the reality is that the very fact that they're on the show field means that they're a winner. The same applies to the Model A Ford Club of America or the early Ford V8 Club of America. Just the fact that you can take your car and enter it in competition and hope that you're going to do well, and that's only accomplished by doing the research that's necessary to make that happen, then that's the reward. It's at the end of the day, nobody cares about the trophies.
Nicely said. Is there a good way for our listeners to keep up with you and follow along with you? Do you have a website? Are you on social media?
Certainly, you can see some of my writings on the National Association of Automobile Clubs of Canada website, and that's www.naacc.ca. And I have a company called Carlson Custom Consulting and Appraisals, so you can call that up as Carlson Consulting .ca, and I make regular updates to both of those sites on a regular basis. Our webmaster for NAACC updates our site every third week, so we're always changing. And it's a very interesting site. It has lots of great information, covers most of the North American major events, and covers all of the Canadian events. So it's worthwhile taking a look at.
There you go. Well, listeners, again, I'll make sure all these links are on John's page. Be sure to join John and friends at the inaugural Las Vegas Concours d'Elegance. It takes place October 25th through the 28th at the beautiful Dragon Ridge Country Club in Henderson, Nevada, just south of Las Vegas. If you want to learn more, just go to and buy tickets. Go to LasVegasConcours.com. John, thanks for being so generous today with your time, your expertise, and for sharing your life with us. Until you and I talk again, I'll see you at the Las Vegas Concours d'Elegance.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. Hey, Mark Green here from Cars Yeah. Did you know you can now see me on the Cars Yeah TV show. It's a weekly visit to some of my past Cars Yeah podcast guests, and I take you along for the ride. You go behind the garage door and into their lives, their businesses, and you get to see what makes them successful. With tens of millions of viewers, Cars Yeah TV is making its mark. Cars Yeah TV is available on MAV TV and Lucas Oil Racing TV. You'll find MAV TV on Direct TV, Fubo TV, Fios by Verizon, or you can stream it through Lucas Oil Racing Television online. And they said I only had a face for podcasting.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.